evening, and welcome to Day 9 of the 2021 Milwaukee Film Festival, presented by Associated Bank. I'm Kara, and I'm the Artistic Director at Milwaukee Film, and this is the Nightcap, presented by the Yabuki Family Foundation. As you are watching great films at the Milwaukee Film Festival, don't forget to cast your vote for the Alan H. Budd and Suzanne L. Seelig Audience Award. To vote, you're just going to go to the film or shorts program page at watch.mkefilm.org and log in with that pass or your ticket code, and you'll see a button that says Vote Now. And when you click that, you will see a form that will serve as your ballot. Same scale as always, where 5 is excellent, and you don't need to worry about the numbers below 5 because all these films are excellent. Those votes get tabulated, and this year, we will close voting at 11:59 p.m. on May 19th in order to announce our awards at a live virtual ceremony on closing night, May 20th at 7 p.m. Where you're watching now is where that will be. So tune in to see if your favorites win those audience awards, which are really meaningful for filmmakers. As you've also seen, we have a double up challenge this year. And this morning, we announced that we had hit our goal of $50,000, but that we've been challenged to raise even more. Bob and Susan Michelet, the generous sponsors of the Double Up, have pushed that goal to $75,000. So we're around 50, but now we have another $25,000 to try to raise in this last week here of the festival. We hope you'll consider helping us do that. To help, you can text Double Up to 44321. You can go to mkefilm.org/donate and donate any amount, $1, $50,000, any amount. Or you can join us as a member if you're not a Milwaukee Film member, or if your membership renews this month, your renewal will also count. Membership is a great way to help support us, but also get free goodies, free movies throughout the year, discounts on tickets. But most importantly, our members help us sustain our nonprofit to do year-round education programs and to put on this festival at a pretty low cost per ticket. So we really hope you'll consider joining us as a member, supporting the Double Up through contributions. And if you're already a member, please, thank you. You really are helping us keep going and come out of this pandemic strong. There's also a cool raffle you can hear about. Learn more on the Double Up page. You want to hear about movies. This evening, it's Predator Night. We are joined by the film teams from Playing with Sharks, Ghost Dogs, and Operation Wolf Patrol. We got all those predators. And if you're watching live on the internet, drop your questions or your comments into the chat on YouTube or Facebook. They'll make their way to us, and we'll try to bring them into our conversation as we go. So without further ado, I'd like to bring the team from Playing with Sharks to the screen. Welcome. Sally, the director of the film, Bettina, producer, and Valerie, a central subject, are all joining us from Australia, where it is what time?
11 o'clock.
11 a.m.
in the morning.
On the 15th of May. You're living in the future. They're really happy that you could join us. The joy of the virtual festival is that Australia is not that far away to come to Milwaukee. I want to start with kind of the origin story. Sally and Bettina, I guess, when did you kind of meet Valerie, get to know her, and sort of get the opportunity to tell her incredible story?
Well, my getting to know Valerie started when I was very young, which was actually subscribing to National Geographic and receiving a magazine, and as a kid looking and seeing Valerie in the chainmail suit with a shark on her arm, and it was a galvanizing image, and I never forgot it. I thought, this woman's extraordinary, and I never imagined that as I then became a natural history filmmaker that I would be asked to direct a series on Valerie and her late husband Ron's life that was for National Geographic more than 20 years ago. And it was a joy to make and to get to know Ron and Valerie and their extensive archive. And Valerie taught my young daughter to scuba dive, and we'd been on trips together. And one day I was just sitting watching the Jane Goodall film, and it just struck me that how on earth have we not made a film about this remarkable woman? And it really had to move quickly because it seemed so obvious, and this beautiful archive that existed. And that's when I approached Sally, and fortunately she was available, and we moved pretty quickly.
We sure moved quick, and thank goodness we did, because then that little virus called COVID came and shut the world's travel opportunities down. But we were very, very fortunate that we had done our principal photography, not the least traveling to Fiji. So thank you, whichever stars, universe, and shark omens were with us. But we edited as the lockdowns
and
began.
having the archive, also really helped in that regard, because it was so rich, so diverse, and it was film backed, so we were able to restore it and rescan it, and it became such an extraordinary and important record of our oceans. And I'm sure when viewers are looking at the film, they can see, the proliferation of fish in areas now that are completely denuded of those species, the size of the fish, the state of our reefs. So, Valerie and Ron's film record is rich and scientifically important as a witness to what once was.
Yeah. And I mean, so how remarkable and wonderful to have that, to be able to kind of give it new life, new audience, new eyeballs, right? As sort of in the form of this film. It's wonderful. Valerie, were you always on board? Were you game from the get-go? I'd love to hear a little bit about whether it took some convincing to kind of open up more again, and be a part of this project.
No, I was game right from the beginning, but then I knew Tina very well. Yeah. And the biggest sadness to me was that my husband, Ron, was not here to enjoy being well known in America for his shark photography. It wasn't difficult at all. I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And there were other companies, other filmmakers who were interested in something similar, but it's better to go with the devil you know than the one you don't.
Actually, I think, Akara, really the question begins with, are you game, Valerie? Because actually I can't think, except maybe jumping off a 50-story building, that Valerie wouldn't be up for anything in this world.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to story building.
Yeah. But I think, being approached by someone that you know and that you already have a little trust certainly makes that yes easier, even if it's coming regardless. That's interesting to hear that there were other, kind of like, I'm going to be unable to avoid this metaphor. There were other film teams circling in the water and that, to be able to sort of start from that ground of, will we know each other? So we have this kind of base to start from is really lucky, and the timing. Yeah.
And that respect for someone that you have, and that the way you portray them really matters. It's not suddenly moving on to the next film. This is someone who's been a major influence on my life, and I know on many other lives that, people who have been inspired to be marine biologists, to dive. She's influenced a lot of people and inspired a lot of conservation effort around the world. And, it's really important that people who have succeeded in their conservation efforts are recognised and acknowledged, and women often get overlooked. Not to put too fine a point on it, but, this is a woman who was held her own at a time when it was very difficult for women to make their mark. They should have been in the kitchen, cooking. Valerie was out there free diving with oceanic white-tip sharks and making friends with moray eels. And, it was truly remarkable what she was doing at the time, with a sort of fearless sense of, I'm diving in and I'm not afraid of the deep. and that, you know, that rubs off on other people. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, we shouldn't be afraid of the deep. It's something that we should explore.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, a space of our world that is often hard to see because, you know, you do have to have a certain technical skill to get there. So I'm, you know, it's really eye-opening to be able to see it in this film and in other kind of underwater photography filmmaking that we obviously have known from the history. Valerie, I'm interested in hearing kind of, you know, the Jaws moment, right? So earlier we were talking a little bit about how Hollywood and storytelling, I think, have contributed to the villainization of animals like sharks or wolves. I'm interested in sort of that choice to participate in this Hollywood production, and you know how you felt like your contributions continue to sort of help give visibility to sharks, and how films like this maybe add to that.
Well, Jaws was a fictitious story about a fictitious shark, and we never gave it a thought. It wasn't a real shark, and sharks don't behave like that, and we just assumed, stupidly I guess, that people would look at it as a toy. And unfortunately, they took it seriously.
Yeah.
Nothing we could say could change it. We went around America doing every talk show, telling the people of America not to be afraid to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And that was sponsored by Universal. I'm sorry, I'm coughing, I'm old.
No.
I'm pretty old. And we were amazed and delighted as a success. It was such a successful film.
Yeah.
And Peter Benchley, who became a very good friend, and we did several films and dive trips with him afterwards, told us he wished he hadn't written the book. And but he, like us, never dreamt of the end result, never dreamt of it. It is a fictitious story. Great whites don't behave like that. They could, but they don't. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Ron and we did many talk shows. There's one shot of me patting a great white, didn't bite me. Mind you, we picked that one well. And with a lot of other sharks, we took it. We did what we could to make the general public understand a little more. But sadly, I think people want to have a monster. They want a big, bad something. The big, bad wolf, the big, bad white shark.
Yeah.
That's what was happening.
Yeah. And so simultaneously, like, yeah, it gave visibility, but also, and gave you the platform to talk and to sort of share the science. But yet, yeah, sort of, I love that there is certainly that, like, need to have kind of a looming specter of scary, that monstrous. Yeah.
Yes. The devil, the witch, the monster in the water, the monster in the jungle. There's always something. Look how kids love monster films. That's worry.
Yeah. We do love to be scared.
Yeah. It was, I think you've touched on it though, Cara. It was galvanizing. It was really, as you said, it was about that visibility, but also then the galvanizing force for Peter Benchley and Valerie and Ron and so many other divers and filmmakers to double down, if you like, on the efforts of showing the real shark. Speaking of children liking monsters.
There's a monster in the background.
I know. Shapes and sizes, even the little ones.
We should have put fins on them.
Yeah.
Yes. Or a dorsal fin.
You could have dropped them off in the harbour.
So I'm interested in hearing from each of you, and Valerie, obviously, sort of you're very familiar with your own life and your own story in this archive, and Bettina, you were very close to this, but from each of you, something that was surprising to you or that you learned over the course of working on this project, or in kind of seeing it come to light and to the world and in the response.
Something that surprises.
Wow. I'm surprised at how very well the film has done. I'm surprised that it all happened while I was still alive, and I would have a few pointers, I guess, wasn't it, Sally? That I had.
The door open. Sorry, Sally's just wrangling some people.
And it was something that needed to be done, actually, and it's been done very well. But it's only a small portion of my life.
Right.
I have a lot more to my life than diving with sharks, believe me. I've written 7 books. I'm having an opening at the Taronga Park Zoo of my paintings. I don't do many things, not just sharks.
Yeah.
I think the surprising thing, for me, is how deeply people are responding to the film. When you start to make a film, you're always hopeful that it's going to create some sort of emotional response. And what's very interesting in some of the feedback that we've been having and the lovely reviews and so on is just how deeply people are touched, either by Valerie's extraordinary force of personality and drive and passion, and or by the vision in the archive of the richness of the ocean that still can be if we protect habitat, and or by the extraordinary archival moments which show you the size of these trophy fish that were just literally off the coast. The point here is that one of the things that was so deeply challenging about making the film was how do you weave all these layers into a personal story and a trajectory of really, truly a heroic character without making it feel in some way some unnecessary hagiography. Well, obviously that was going to be difficult because Valerie has achieved so much. And yet the responses from the audience and, as I say, from critics sort of indicates that people are seeing those deeper layers. And I know Tina's made this comment before. We are in a time where it's very difficult for us to be connected precisely because of the online space. And here we are showing how you can be connected in nature. And we believe that there is an appetite to nurture that part of humanity and the species, all the species that inhabit the earth.
I think that came through very strongly, in our eyes about Valerie's relationship with sharks was not with a group of carnivores, not with even a species, but she was interacting on an individual level. And I think there's movement for all of us to, even legal recognition of animals being sentient beings, whales being sentient beings. I think our eyes are being opened to, it's not them and us, we're all in this together, and how important the sharks are in the whole ecology, what happens if you take out a species, but not just the species, but every individual. And Valerie very early on recognized those personalities in the way that we would meet a Labrador and have a relationship. Valerie would meet a tawny shark and, interact with it. And that was in my mind, quite revolutionary, for someone to be doing that all that time ago. It comes down to the amount of time Valerie spent in the water witnessing firsthand these animals. And it's something that not everyone has an opportunity to do now because they're not around the way they were. So that was something very particular about the film, that we had a record of that, and we had a record of Valerie's relationship, with individual animals throughout her life. There's one amazing scene that we didn't get in the film, but actually your viewers could probably find Googling on YouTube. Valerie made friends with a honeycomb eel, a type of like a moray eel from the sea near Indonesia. And it's beautiful spotted eel, pale with these sort of blotches on it. And the first time Valerie saw this eel, she said, you had some fish?
Yes, but he wouldn't take it. He was frightened of me. So I gave the fish to a few of his friends who weren't frightened. And I went back to visit this eel. It was very, very big. Every year I'd go and visit this eel. Then one year it came out and wrapped itself around my body and took my offering of fish. And after that, we were great friends. And we'd swim around together and we'd roll around on the sand together. And it's on film. Eels, like all animals, respect kindness and attention. There's nice attention. Unfortunately, the general public, probably a lot to do with the media, think that moray eels and sharks and stingrays are all deadly. I mean, I tried to stop a fisherman killing a banjo ray, totally harmless. And he said it's a killer and stabbed it in the head. No one's ever been harmed by a banjo ray. It really distresses me that so little is known about the marine environment that covers well over half of the planet. It's just an alien place full of mysterious animals, and we're looking to go to Mars. We're studying Venus. Why don't we study what's right here on our planet? The oceans. Some people are doing it, but it's nowhere near enough. And unfortunately, to the way I see it, most people who work in the ocean want to do something big. They're not interested in minnows. They're interested in big things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I understand that. We were interested in big things. You know why? We couldn't sell minnows and guppies to the television stations on the news hour. It had to be a death-defying, supposedly, with me in a bikini, flapping around in front of a grey nurse shark that's never bitten anyone in its life. But that's the general public, and that's the media.
Yeah. And there's so many lessons, I think, in, how we treat one another, human and non-human animals, and, and non-animal, life forms, trees, etc. There's a lot of wonderful lessons around that empathy and just like showing up, being kind, continuing to show up. That eel needed you to be like loyal and consistent before you were trustable. And I know some humans like that, and I definitely know this cat that's like that. So I think there's a lot to learn, kind of cross species as well in the film. What's next for the film? And for each of you, there's a painting show that most of us won't be able to get to. But what is next for the film and for each of you?
The film is going on to the Disney platform, which is great. We haven't got the exact date yet, but very soon. Stay tuned. Which is fantastic. National Geographic really was the perfect home for this film. The conservation ethos, like all the things that we've been talking about, National Geographic really embraces. Mm-hmm. They embrace and honour people like Valerie, who are explorers, and the fact that Valerie photographed for National Geographic, and was on the cover, part of, for the film to end up there, it was really a natural fit. We are also perhaps doing something more with the bull sharks in Fiji. And I'm currently working on a film about a woman who's going on a regenerative farming journey. So it's another story of sort of healing and the land, caring for country, and it's about her suffering from the bushfires that nearly consumed her farm, and how that caused her a great deal of mental and emotional grief. And by converting her farm to a regenerative farm is her way of healing through that.
Yeah.
And well, for me personally, I hope that I read today the 103 million subscribers of Disney Plus. I hope that they will tune in to Playing with Sharks. We are so obviously, as Tina said, we're thrilled that this is the home for the film. Yeah. I'm personally working on a couple of different things. I have more archival projects that I'm very eager to push, including one about she's definitely as formidable as Valerie, but she's probably crazier than you. And I know that could be a hard claim to make, but the Baroness, as she's called, is an artist who came out in New York in the turn of the century with Marcel Duchamp and Man Ray and Hemingway and so forth. Anyway, she's a fabulous film coming to you soon. Dramatic ideas, more documentary films, trying to do it all, really, and never having enough hours in the day, especially with that little people wandering in the background of all your, professional life. But that's the world we're in these days. We're all in each other's bedrooms,
We were all children once.
That's right. And they ask the most interesting, Tina mentioned the generations that have been influenced by Valerie. My kids adore Valerie, like Tina's kids adored Valerie. And, that impact is still going on. And it's just such a pleasure and a privilege to be, in some small way, part of that. So thank you, Valerie.
Oh, look, it's a pleasure. I get along very well with children, sharks, eels, rays, and certain fish. In a school of fish, there's always the friendly guy, the bully, the frightened one. I get along well with all of them, but mostly the friendly.
And I do just want to say that unlike octopi, who unfortunately have a short lifespan, moray eels live for a really long time. So this friendship is 35 years or something, just so everybody understands that depth, that loyalty.
Yeah.
And the memory. Yeah.
Yeah, I met honey eel probably in the mid-70s, and that's a long time ago. I don't think you were even born. And she's still there. I haven't been able to visit her because of COVID, but otherwise, every year I try to drop in and say hello and give her a fish, which she loves, and give her a pat and a cuddle and go my way. And she sits there and waits for me for another year, I guess.
Yeah. You owe her extra cuddles and probably an explanation, but I'm sure she'll understand. It's been unusual. Well, thank you three for this film, for your time. We'll make sure we watch for it on Disney Plus, and we'll watch for these next projects, and stay in touch with your Milwaukee fans and friends. Thank you.
And thanks to the audience all for joining us in celebrating Valerie's life.
Yes.
Good night.
And I'm going to welcome on screen and hand the mic over to Anna Sampers.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kara. Switching gears a little bit, please help me welcome to the screen our next guest, director of the short film Ghost Dogs, which plays in our Midnight Shorts program, director Joe Kappa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Joe. Welcome.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, can you talk a little bit about where the inspiration for this short came from? I am dying to know.
Okay. Yeah, Ghost Dogs. It's about a dog being tormented, a newly adopted dog being tormented by its new owner's former pets, so deceased dogs. And so that's where the name comes from, Ghost Dogs. I've been drawing these like ghost dog characters for a while with human legs and arms. And when I first got myself a tablet to learn how to animate straight onto a computer, I wanted to do like cell animation and teach myself animation. And because I had drawn these like so many times, it was like the first thing I thought to animate and have them actually crawl. And when I finished doing that, I was like, okay, there needs to be a story here. Let's make a short film. And I thought I could get it done in like 3 months, but it ended up taking 2 years to make.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it was just like, I was so deep into the project, I finally got it done. Yeah. And then the story just came from like storyboarding. and just trying to think of like what would be the next interesting shot to make. And that's how the whole thing came together.
Nice. You mentioned that you had drawn those ghost dogs for a while. How did you decide on the look of them? How did that come into your brain?
Yeah, I mean, I think I made it just to make people laugh, because I was with company. I remember when I first drew the first ghost dog. It was just to be creepy, you know, to get a reaction, and it just seemed like, yeah. And this was like 11 years ago, but yeah, it was just like a dog with human legs and arms. It just made sense at the time.
Yeah, when I first saw the film, I did not realize that I wanted to come back in another life as a ghost dog. But the second I saw them, I was like, oh yeah, that's when I die, I want to be a ghost dog.
Oh man, well that's a new reaction. I haven't heard that one yet. Most people are terrified of the ghost dogs. I'm glad you want to be one. I'll be one too.
Yeah, I loved them. What was the animation process like? You said it took 2.5 years.
Yes. Yeah, I did it all in Photoshop and After Effects. In animation, I've just learned this program called Toon Boom, which I guess is what everybody uses now. And I just didn't know it existed. So yeah, so I bought a book to teach myself kind of like a walk cycle and everything, and just went from there. So it was all just experimentation, trial and error, and had my brother color, and I hired somebody to do background art, Patrick Carroll, and I thought he knocked it out of the park. And then got my music guy, Nick Pasta, composed the music, and that kind of helped me tell the story as well. So it was just like all these little pieces kind of falling together as I was making it, as I was learning it, as I was changing the story and the ending. So it was kind of an organic process to get to the final product.
Yeah, that's great. And there's such great imagery throughout the entire film, but especially that as I was rewatching it today, that hallway sequence where like the window rolls down and the dog peeks his head in, and then it's just like hallway after hallway and like a psychedelic squirrel that runs through and just everything like melting together. Can you talk a little bit about how that all came together?
Yeah, I mean, so Ghost Dogs was like drawings I made 11 years ago, and then the kind of the whole setting just kind of comes from like dreams I've had, recurring dreams where I'm stuck in a haunted house. Like I've had dreams like that for all my life that I can remember. So I knew I wanted to kind of share that experience, this kind of weird, well-lit home that the floor plan really doesn't make sense, and it's always raining outside. It was just like such a vibe that I wanted to capture. So the psychedelic sequence was definitely like an avenue where I could really like be like, okay, you're in my dreams now. And then, yeah, I mean, at some point during the psychedelic sequence, it ramps up from 12 frames per second to 24 frames per second. And it's just a lot of drawing the same thing over and over and over again with like light change. And it actually like broke my shoulder, so to speak. I had a frozen shoulder and I couldn't lift my arm for 3 months.
Oh my God.
I couldn't draw for 3 months. So that's also why it took me so long to make. So yeah, it was an issue, but finally, yeah.
Well, and that sounds intense. That sounds very intense. But the general, like the vibe of that house is so creepy, and it's hard to like really put your finger on, you know, just sort of, it's clear that someone had a party, but that party is over and it's just kind of generally dirty with party remnants. And I don't know why, but there's just something so creepy about that. It like really gets your head going about what happened here.
Cool.
What was this? And we're just sort of seeing the aftermath.
Cool. Yeah, I always said like if I just came into a bunch of like fun money, like somebody just willed me into their will, I would make a haunted house for sure. Like I love the whole vibe of a haunted house, but my haunted house would be like that. It would be like just a dirty house that people had to walk through. I think would be the creepiest haunted house I could think of.
Yeah, I would go to that haunted house for sure.
Yeah, did you help program for the entire like like our block, the Midnight Block, the horror block.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of my favorite programs to be a part of. I loved every film.
You.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great plug for the audience. If you have not yet checked out our Midnight Shorts, please do so. Joe Kappa says they're great.
Yeah.
You don't have to take my word for it. You went for this film, I think you went deep into dog culture. I loved the use of like the clicker, the dog training clicker, to kind of like set off memories or what have you, and all the great signs around the house, like life would be rough without a dog and all of that stuff. Do you have a dog? Did you do dog research?
I did. I'm just a big fan of dogs. I don't own one. I'm just a big fan. But yeah, I've got a dog, a pit lab. Her name's Ramona. I'm looking at her right now. Yeah, I come up with a lot of dog ideas just from walking my dog every day. So yeah, she was probably a big inspiration as well. Yeah. How about you? You got a dog?
I do have a dog. He has not seen ghost dogs, but I'd be curious. I feel like he is afraid of vacuums. So I feel like that Roomba would not be to his cup of tea.
Exactly. The Roomba idea definitely comes from my dog's experience with vacuums.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the sound design? You did the sound design as well, correct?
I started off trying to record my own stuff, and that's in there. Then I used a lot of sounds from SoundSnap, I believe it's called, which really saved me. Again, this is like all like new for me. This is my first short film, and yeah, now that I've discovered SoundSnap, it's like the possibilities are endless. Once I learned how to like animate somebody's mouth talking, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a game changer now. You have people talking. But yeah, making the sound was a lot of fun. In fact, I did that and then got into Sundance, and I knew the sound wasn't like that great. So then I asked like a local person to fix the sound for me, and then he like took out all of my sound effects. Like he somehow understood us, like, get rid of everything I put in there, and I spent so much time on it, put in your own. And I was just like, I didn't really like it too much. So I went back to my original sound. But it's the sound and the music. I mean, Nick Poss, my sound guy, did such an incredible job of just giving me just noises, just that dissonant kind of, I call them like The Witch, and The Shining obviously is a big influence. So I just had like a lot of like atmospheric stuff that I could play with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. Do you have a favorite part of the film?
I really do like the scene where the dog sticks its head out the window, and just that it's a car door window.
Yeah.
And then, but that shot, I mean, I straight up stole from a movie called The Keep by Michael Mann, which was like in the 80s. I don't really think that movie's that great. Sorry if Michael Mann's listening, but that shot is amazing. It's just like these Nazi guards like look through a hole in like a castle, basically, into like a black void, and it just zooms out, and you're like, oh wow, they're like looking into something very deep and ancient.
Nice. Is there a way for people to follow the film online if they are curious?
Yeah, we got ghostdogs.net and then Ghost Dogs Film on Twitter and Instagram.
Thanks. I encourage people to check that out. And then what are you working on next? What's next for you?
I just finished a cartoon for some people where they made a pilot, so that's done. I don't know what they're going to try to do with it. And then, I don't know, I just want to make another short film. It's interesting because I'm just learning just the film festival kind of like experience, like what programmers look for, and it's all kind of a mystery to me still. But it's been fun being a part of film festivals and watching a lot of the stuff and kind of just seeing what the general vibe is, and what everyone's attracted to. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, for your first film, I would say you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you so much.
You have a lot to live up to with your subsequent films. I'm very excited to check them out.
Okay, cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for allowing us to share Ghost Dogs with the Milwaukee audience.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing me in with these two great documentaries.
Yeah, no problem. And with that, I will throw it back to Kara.
Thanks, Anna. I'm a little disappointed that Zissou and Ramona were not able to engage during that Q&A, but I assume they are waiting for the petting Zoom on Sunday at 4. Henry is getting ready. All right, I'm going to bring Joe Brown, director of Operation Wolf Patrol, on screen. Henry has a lot of questions for you. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe just his tail. Joe, you have been working on this film for a little while, but take me back to the beginning. When, where, how did you meet Rod Coronado and Wolf Patrol?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Kara. Yeah, I worked on the film for a good 6 years, and it started in the fall of 2014. I was living and working in Milwaukee, teaching video production, and I was looking for a new project. I had a young child at home who was maybe a year, and I was kind of looking for an easy film. I shouldn't say an easy film, but I had a kid at home, so I was like, I'm interested in environmental issues. I'm hearing about the wolf problem, as some people were calling it, so maybe I can do a 30-minute pros and cons film about wolves, which seemed cut and dry to me, right? But then in searching out the issue, I learned about Rod Coronado and the Wolf Patrol, which is a group that does citizens monitoring of hunting practices in the North Woods. And I embedded myself with that crew. And then 4 or 5, 6 years later, I finally released the film. That was after a lot of twists and turns, in terms of wildlife and wolves being hunted and then listed on the endangered species list and then delisted. So there was a lot of twists and turns there. There was also a lot of twists and turns in terms of legal status for myself and the work that I did, because due to the work that I was doing and the work that Rod was doing, Wisconsin strengthened hunter harassment laws to prohibit filming and photography of hunters on public lands. So lots of twists and turns over those 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah. I'm going slightly out of the order that I thought, but I want to dig into that moment because you and the film become part of the film. And that's like, for a lot of documentary filmmakers, like a huge no-no. Like, oh, I don't want to be in front of the camera. I am behind the camera. Like, can you talk about that moment to choose to include that in this film, to take it as a piece of what was happening? Can you just talk through that that moment where you had to decide, like, am I going to be a part of this film and not a neutral observer?
Sure. Yeah, that's also a really good question. I never really wanted to be in the film. I mean, there were a few moments where you catch me in the corner or something because there's GoPros running and different cameras running, and I'm running my own camera. And that was like the extent to which I wanted to be in the film. But as I said, as we were filming hunters on public lands, hunters became frustrated by the fact that they were being filmed, which I understand. It is somewhat frustrating, but they are on public lands in areas where poaching and things have occurred. So, they really don't have an expectation of privacy there. But because of their frustrations and then the strengthening of this hunter harassment law, I saw no way to complete the film without including, what is a constitutional issue. Mm-hmm. And I had launched a lawsuit with the Animal Legal Defense Fund to challenge the constitutionality of the law. And it just felt as if it had to be a part of the film because it was, of course, leading to a lot of the conflicts that we were having in the forest. We were trying to document what was going on with wildlife, but hunters were pretty much acting as if they owned the woods. And so I think it becomes a really interesting study of wildlife, but also a really interesting study of land use, land management, the rural-urban divide. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film. And upon completing it, I realized that it is about more than animals. There's a lot of, as I said, that rural-urban divide and like toxic masculinity in the film. And I don't want to slam all hunters. I know there are ethical hunters out there who are good people, but many of the hunters that I interacted with while filming this, they were showing, I would say, not their best side. But it was difficult to put me in the film. And sometimes, I had a Q&A the other day, and I sometimes regret it because I did want to make a film about the animal issues. And the film is about animal issues, but it also became a film about people issues. And we have, we always are dealing with people issues and in our lives, and animals always get the short shrift. And so I feel that is one thing. I don't want to say I regret it, because that story about the law needed to be told, but it does take away a little bit from the animal issues, which is unfortunate.
Well, and I think we were talking a little earlier about, those lines between what is about land and animals very quickly becoming political and economical, and those human and animal issues maybe don't neatly separate. And I think the film, it makes it clear that, there's not like a line there. These things are interwoven in really complicated ways as we make laws and policies that have implications on animals and land, even if we think they're just about the humans, and vice versa. I think that the film demonstrates that. So I don't think it was a mistake. As a viewer, I'm going to say I think it was important that we get complicated in that way. I want to go back to sort of Rod. Rod is a complicated central figure, and I'm interested in hearing how you gained his trust. If you gained his trust, it's unclear whether, what trust might mean for him, and sort of the balance between kind of an easy kind of hero villain kind of story, either of which I think you could choose within the film, and sort of how you navigate that complicated central figure piece.
Yeah, well, for those who don't know or who haven't seen the film yet or something like that, Rod has a complicated history, 30, 35 years of activism in the environmental community, involved in Earth First and some of the real radical movements, and spent 6 years in prison for eco-sabotage. When I joined the movement, or really when I decided to embed myself in Wolf Patrol for the purposes of the film, he had sworn off illegal activity. And, that's why I felt comfortable doing it. But it did take some time to develop trust with Rod. I remember the first phone conversation I had with him. He said, well, you could potentially come out and film if you are, one, not with the FBI. He's had trouble with the FBI in his life. And two, not annoying. And I just said, well, I'm not with the FBI, and you'll have to decide if I'm annoying or not. And I went and visited him at his home, and had a few phone conversations with him, and just kind of joined him in the field. And I think I proved that I wasn't annoying, and that I was serious about documenting what was going on. I have never done any radical environmental action in my life, but I know a lot about it. I've always been very interested in it, and I've read, Edward Abbey, and I know about Earth First, and I've read about deep ecology and such. So I was able to talk about those things with Rod, and I think that helped kind of get me a little closer to him. And I do think that he ended up trusting me, and I tried to maintain some kind of separation in terms of filmmaker and friend or something like that. But when you spend 4 or 5 years with a group, you do become somewhat friendly with them. I tried not to let that influence me in terms of how I represented the issues or the characters in the film, and I did try really hard to not villainize Rod, and also not make him a hero who's on a pedestal, but just like he does these things, he has this past. Perhaps it's a redemption story. I think Rod might push back against that and say he doesn't need redemption, because he may question the way he did some things in the past, but he says he speaks for animals. And so, it has been a complicated relationship with Rod, but I do respect the fact that he fights for wildlife. He never stops fighting for wildlife, and he has stayed true to his promise to do activism in a legal way post-prison.
Even when the legal boundaries keep shrinking and changing and contorting themselves.
That was the one question. It was like, well, if they change the laws to say you can't, use cameras on public lands, is that a law that he was willing to break, or that I was willing to break? And it was very unclear too. I mean, and this is the problem with the law as it's written in Wisconsin, is it's very unclear. It has a chilling effect on free speech. And laws are not supposed to be written that way. Laws are not supposed to be ambiguous, and this one really is.
Yeah. It is unfortunately timely that you're releasing this film in 2021 here, on the heels of or amidst sort of an unprecedented 2021 hunt. I'm interested in hearing kind of reactions to the film maybe now, updates from what Rod and Wolf Patrol were up to amidst, back in February. Just sort of this moment of time, unfortunate timeliness of your film.
Yeah, it has unfortunately been timely. And, when I started the film in 2014, wolves were being hunted in Wisconsin, but quite quickly they were relisted as protected. And then so they enjoyed some protection for quite a few years until the Trump administration delisted them in October. It is written in state statute in Wisconsin that if wolves are not listed on the federal endangered species list, that a hunt must be held. So everyone said, okay, we get it. Like, that's state law. There will be a hunt. And Trump delisted October 2020. Typically, wolf hunts take place in October, November, and everyone assumed there would be no hunt like that week, right? They weren't going to force a hunt in October, like a week after they had delisted. So everybody assumed, okay, 2021, there'll be a hunt. And there was some protests. A lot of folks were upset. Native communities were upset. But somehow, in thinking, that the hunt would take place in October of 2021, November, maybe December, some various groups, some out-of-state groups too, pro-hunting organizations were able to sue and force Wisconsin to hold what was called an emergency wolf hunt in February. And so in 3 days, they killed 216 wolves, which is potentially a quarter of the wolf population in Wisconsin. That's also a time generally when female wolves are, about ready to have their pups. So it's not an ideal time to have a hunt. So people were quite upset about it. It was way over quota. And unfortunately, I do think that Wisconsin did not look good in this moment. An emergency hunt is a really strange thing. We say we manage wildlife, but it feels as if it was mismanagement. And I have openly criticized the DNR about this at times and other Q&As and such. And I do want to emphasize that I think that the DNR is populated with smart people, who care about wildlife, but this feels like it was a major misstep. I don't know if it could have been prevented, but I'm not really sure what the rush was with the hunt. It feels as if it was a political statement, maybe a states' rights versus federal rights sort of situation. Again, kind of like that rural-urban divide almost. Wolf Patrol was out in February of 2021. They've been using their Facebook and their YouTube page to do updates. I was not there.
Yeah.
I do know that Wolf Patrol is going to monitor through the summer and also potentially at any wolf hunts that happen later in the year. I may or may not be able to go. I no longer live in Wisconsin. But the other thing Wolf Patrol monitors in the summer is the use of hunting dogs, which is a big part of the film, because hunting dogs are used quite a bit in northern Wisconsin, and they are frequently run in the forest for training activities, and they're largely unregulated. Other states like Michigan and Minnesota limit the amount of time that dogs can run in the woods. Wisconsin doesn't limit it in quite the same way. And although they may not be engaged in a hunt, they are, according to many people, and I believe this as well, disrupting wildlife, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the Wild West in northern Wisconsin in terms of hunting. It's very unregulated.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know how well dogs respond to, okay, but you're not hunting.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. We'll have to ask Joe, the director of Ghost Dogs, to help us interpret that part. What's next for you project wise? What's next for the film? I know you're sort of showing in festivals, but new projects that you have in the hopper, or places where folks can watch for the film, or updates after they finish watching the film during the 2021 Milwaukee Film Festival?
Sure. Well, there's a website. It's wolfpatrolfilm.com, and you can learn more about the film there and where it's going next. It is doing pretty well on the festival circuit. It's playing internationally in a few festivals, and it's at the beginning of its festival run, so I hope that it gets out there even more widely. I'm in conversation with about 3 distributors right now. So I'm, hoping to distribute it soon on, platforms that are going to get a really broad reach. And I'm kind of trying to figure out which one is the best fit. And I hope to have it, more widely available before an October wolf hunt. That was always kind of the original idea.
Right.
And then this February thing came so fast. That was really disappointing to me in terms of my ability to get the film out at that time. But, unfortunately, I think the film will remain relevant for some time. Other projects, I lived in Milwaukee for years. I've moved, and I now live in Colorado. I'm teaching at the University of Denver, and I'm starting to build a environmental filmmaking program there. So that's taking a lot of time, and I'm excited about that. And through that, we're doing some films. I'm doing a film about tree inequity in Denver. And this is something that can apply nationally. It's just this idea that some neighborhoods have more trees than others. And usually it's the rich neighborhoods that have the trees. And then the neighborhoods that are not rich do not have the trees or the parks. And this is an issue when it comes to global warming. These areas are much warmer and are going to get even warmer. So it's a problem. And I'm also starting to work on another film that I just got a pretty large grant for, about the way that children relate to wild animals and the sense of wonder that they get from those relationships, and what happens when those relationships are compromised or lost. So pretty busy. Also trying to get out in the woods and hike and stuff.
Yeah, which, now that it's not, 10 feet of snow in your woods, it becomes a possibility. Well, thank you so much for this film, for your time. We'll keep an eye out for those next projects. I'm fascinated by both of them. Just thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you watching on the internet. Thank you to Kenton and LaShondra for our interpretation this evening. Go watch some films. We'll see you this weekend. We'll see you on the internet. Enjoy. Good night.